All right, welcome everyone. This is Corey Strothman with Grace in Your Corner, and I am excited to be here today with Mr. Aaron Duryea. So I have connected with Aaron. We are in his coffee shop in Seneca, Kansas, Main Street, and he has talked to me about wanting to share his story. As you all know my story, I believe that the more vocal we can be and outspoken, the more people we can reach. So Aaron, thanks for taking the time to be here with me today.
Glad to be here. So, yep.
All right, and with that, I'm just going to kind of jump in. We're going to let Aaron tell a story. If there's any questions that I have, I'll jump in. But Aaron, I'm going to give you the floor and let you talk about your story.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Well, I guess I could start off. I was a school teacher. I coached, actually taught up in Bern and coached up there, and got the opportunity to coach Corey. Well, as life changed, we always move on to bigger and better things. So I ended up taking a couple other teaching positions. But all through my teaching career, I was an adamant drinker. Every night I'd come home, and whether it was a beer, whether it was a mixed drink, I always sit down and have a few drinks with my wife or my buddies, and didn't really think too much of it. Of course, at the time when I taught in Bern, I was in my early 20s, so I was actually living the dream, and everything was good. We ended up having, now we have 4 kids. So as life progressed, and it always does, stress somehow follows that.
Sure.
And as I also progressed in my teaching career, and I really did consider myself a good teacher, a really good coach. I always, that's one of the reasons I wanted to go into teaching, is because I love kids and I love to coach. And kindergarten was by far my favorite grade to teach, and that's where I spent most of my years, was as a kindergarten teacher.
Now, I will say, being a principal in an elementary school, I don't know how kindergarten teachers do it, because that's one room I'd walk into, see the great things that are going on, and think, I got to get out of here because I can't handle it. So yeah. Good for you for doing that.
Yeah, and I loved it, and I know it takes a certain person to be a primary or even a kindergarten teacher, but it also takes a certain person to teach junior high with the mouse and the smells, and then you get to high school and it's another ball of wax. But anyways, I really enjoyed teaching. I ended up in Rossville, and that's where I did I think it was my last 7 years of teaching. And even up until that point, like I mentioned, Corey, it was almost every night, and I didn't think I had a problem, because everybody around me was doing the same thing I did. Was basically, for the most part, they were going home and having a drink. And I knew this because I was hanging out with a lot of my friends or colleagues or whatnot. But it wasn't up until my last 2 or 3 years, in Rossville, where I really started noticing a difference. And I mentioned before, I don't know what caused that, but I was starting to get, more anxiety, more stressed out. And I think a lot of that was my career, the situation I was put in. I know my administration, which they were wonderful. They thought a lot of me, because, I accomplished so many things. And when they asked me to do things, I was a yes man.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Sure, I will do that. And so I taught kindergarten there for, I think, 5 of those 7 years. And being there, they asked me, well, how would you like to be a volleyball coach? Yeah, sure. Did that. And then the next year came upon, and I don't remember the specifics, but I was then a basketball coach. And then came track. So the last few years when I was at, at the school, I was teaching kindergarten. I was doing volleyball, doing basketball, doing track. Hey, we need a president of the NEA. You think you got some time?
Just keeps coming, more and more and
Just
more.
keeps coming. And of course, with school, as you know, there's more requirements, which required me to be at school longer and longer. Well, like I said, I don't know how it happened, but I was gone from 6:30 in the morning till, sometimes I get home at 5, but then I turn right back around. And then, of course, my school needed a lawn keeper. So then I was mowing on top of that. So here I was doing all these jobs except for being the most important job, and that was being a dad and a husband. Mm-hmm. So, and I thought I still, of course we struggled. My wife, she was a paraprofessional at the time. And so we just bought a new house, and, I was trying to, be the breadwinner or whatever, by doing all this other stuff, this extracurricular, and of course school teachers, we don't get paid that much as,
right. Right.
So anyways, one thing led to another. When I got home, of course every night I'd come home and have a drink. It progressed over time. The more stressed I got, I'd come home, and my tolerance, I know it was getting higher, so I would come home, late at night, and, I'd have a bottle of A&A there, and it didn't take nothing for me to drink it. I'd have a half gallon, and by the time I went to bed, it'd be 3/4 gone. Mm. And so I'd seen that, but I was oblivious to what was happening. And my wife, she really didn't pay too much attention, but as the years progressed, I would come home, drink, and then just go to sleep and pass out. Well, that part she started noticing. So she said, Amy, my wife, she basically came to me and said, I think we need to cut back on the drinking. I think it's affecting all of us. I know you've got a lot going on. And I said, all right, I will try to cut back, So I tried, and it was so hard after drinking all those years to cut back. And so there came that awful day where my wife said, okay, Aaron, this is enough. I think I don't remember what year it was, but it was second to my last year of hospital. She tells me it's either going to be drinking or it's going to be me. It was getting to that point. Yeah. So I said, okay, there's no choice here, easy decision. So obviously I chose, my wife, my family. But what I didn't realize is how hard it was going to be for me to give it up. So one thing led to another. I actually convinced my wife, okay, maybe if I just drank non-alcoholic beer, that would suffice it. And of course, she didn't really know any better, and I was just finding any excuse to drink. So I tried alcoholic beer, and I know that term insanity. Yeah. Yep. That fits me to a T, because I would try so many different ways. Like, I'll just have one drink tonight, or I'll drink non-alcoholic beer, or I'll have just beer, or it was always something. I'd tell my wife, and I'd always expect a different result. Mm-hmm. Yet it was always the same result. I'd be drunk, or I would, I wasn't really violent or anything. I was just to the point where it relaxed me, but I wouldn't pay too much attention to my family and my wife, which I needed to do. So anyways, I convinced her of the non-alcoholic beer, and that lasted for, a few months. And at one point I just couldn't take it. So I was like, I just need a drink. I don't remember quite what the deal was, but I was having a bad day, and I was suffering from depression. I was thinking, I work all the time. I still have trouble paying our bills, our house payment and whatnot. So as alcoholics do, we are great liars, and yes. We hide things. So the first thing I thought of was vodka. So what I would do is I would start off with a pint. I'd get the vodka, and it was odorless. It was, for the most part, it was clear. It was cheap. So I started drinking vodka on the side, yet drinking NA beer or whatever I had to do to make my wife happy. But she noticed there was a difference. There's still something not right, and you could tell the way I acted. I was grumpier. I was, my kids would say something, and I'd snap at them, and that lasted quite a while. I want to say 6 months maybe, but I was always hiding that. And what I would do is I'd drink them. It was a binge drink. Yeah. I would drink it, and it was gone because I didn't want, my wife to know. So I would hide them. I would hide them in dressers. I would hide them all over the house. you know. And so, but my kids and my whole family, they knew something was going on by the way I was acting, because I was always gone, and I was home. When I was home, I'd either be out in the garage or I would be gone for just a short amount of time. And that's what I was doing. I was binge drinking. Well, it was my last year at Rossville, it was getting pretty bad with my drinking. And of course, by this time, my 1 pint of vodka was up to 3 or 4. And I was drinking 10 high, anything cheap, anything I could have. And it had to be like a pint size, so I could get rid of it.
Right.
So I'd hide that. Well, I had an accident in the shower that morning because I was still like hungover, I guess. And I slipped and hit my side of my head on, I think it was the side of the toilet at that time, I really don't remember. But I had a big black eye, and I had to go to school. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go to school because I never missed. That's one of my things. And so I went to school with a black eye, did some fibbing to the teachers. And what happened, you know? And so, and I knew my wife knew, and I knew she knew that I was choosing alcohol over her. So I then convinced her, you know, and my wife, bless her heart, she would do everything. She was so supportive.
Mm-hmm.
Go to some meetings. So I tried some meetings and did all that, and it didn't work.
So at this point, because a lot of what you say is very similar and rings home with what I've done, but so you've mentioned anxiety, you've mentioned depression,
Mm-hmm.
along with the addiction aspect. Had you done anything to address anxiety, depression?
Mm-hmm.
Just, okay. So, and when I was going through this cycle, I found that when I drank, it was that relief, that escape that night, but I felt even worse about myself the next day. I mean, how was it when you were in the morning? And
I just felt like I was a failure. I think I was more depressed in the morning because I looked back and see what I did the night before.
Yep. And
I felt like I'm not a good husband. I'm not a good father. It was a horrible feeling. And I actually, the last year was not my best year of teaching because I was being even more, I was more depressed. I had more anxiety for some reason. And you mentioned you haven't done anything to follow up. At that time, I was oblivious I didn't want to seek help. I didn't, because I just, you know, people depended on me. They called me Mr. D. They thought everything of me. I went to school and I was a great teacher, yet went home and I was a different person because I binge drank. And it was chaotic. It was so chaotic. And I try not to think about it, but I do think about it every so often, just so it reminds me of where I am today.
mm-hmm.
But you mentioned you never did anything. Well, there was a day that came, my last year at Rossville. My wife depends on me, my family depends on me. I'm going to do something about this. It's not like they didn't want to. There would be times, Corey, I would find myself in a liquor store and buying that bottle of vodka and walking out, and I'm thinking, how did I even get here?
Mm.
You know, it was like kind of like a blur. Well, I decided, okay, I'm going to try giving this up again, you know, before things get too bad. So I made a doctor's appointment behind my wife's back and got a prescription for anxiety.
Okay.
They put me on Xanax.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a good fix. So then I started taking Xanax, and I was actually, in all reality, I think back, I was a really, really good teacher because I had energy. I felt better in the mornings. When you mentioned how did I feel when I woke up, just pop a pill. And so there I was, my last year, popping pills, Xanax, going home, still binge drinking here and there. And slowly, and I did not realize it at the time, I was changing.
Mm.
I was becoming a person I didn't even know. I mean, I was doing things I would never have done. And I know a lot of it was because the Xanax and the alcohol was a bad combination. Xanax is just a horrible drug. But anyways, back to my story. At the time I was doing Xanax, and then of course binge drinking, and things were going okay. I had my accident. Well, I got home one night after coaching, you know, and of course I knew people were talking, but with the Xanax, it helped me, and I was like, well, they're just, you know, I'm tenured, and I do a good job at school. It's just my nightlife. Well, in my kitchen, there is a group of teachers, and my wife, they had an intervention. And I was crying. It took me forever, but I finally agreed to go to treatment. So off I go, and it was like on a Tuesday. I ended up going to Mound Ridge for a month, and it was wonderful. They showed me the tools, how to, get sober, stay sober. It was great, So I come back that year after treatment, and I lost a little bit of weight, and I knew I knew everyone around me knew what was going on, but they knew I went to treatment, so that's going to be better now. Mm-hmm. It's all good.
Right. It's done. It's over.
So after treatment, I came back, and the administration and everything was so supportive. I can't say it enough, but they still, because I got along with them so well, and I want to believe I did such a good job there, but I had a disease that I really had a hard time controlling. And I remember my principal pulling me to the side and say, Aaron, we are supporting you, whatever it takes, we think a lot of you. But in my mind, it really didn't matter. I kept thinking, eventually, after I went to treatment, when am I going to get my next drink? Am I going to go the rest of my life not having a drink? Am I going to go to a party where everybody else is drinking and I have to say, no, I'm not going to have that drink? And that's just not normal. And so I had a problem with that. And although Mound Ridge, Valley Hope taught me the skills and the tools, what I needed to stay sober and clean, what it didn't do is, and what it couldn't do is when I got out, there was so much stress there. Their anxiety was still there. There's problems. You got family problems, work problems. And I didn't really know how to put it all together and, to stay sober and clean.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another. I kept on my, I think I was sober for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then I relapsed. And of course, my wife calls back to Mound Ridge. My husband relapsed. What do I do? And of course, what do they say is, well, that's normal. Mm-hmm. Just remind him of, the things that we taught him. I'm not going back to treatment again. So, I was just to that point, and it was so rough. It was probably it was the worst couple years of my life. But anyways, she knew I chose alcohol again. She knew. She talked to me and said, it's either me or the alcohol. She knew it because I was back to my ways. I was back to trying to convince her, let's do NA beer, let's, whatever it takes, And I was still went back, found my old pills, got back within 2 months. I was back to where I was at. And so I had I think all of it together, I had a hard time focusing. So, and I knew my administration and colleagues, they were all talking, and they knew something was going on. I ended up resigning because I was shaking. I couldn't say my name without being all, I had night sweats and whatnot. So it was going pretty rough. But back to my wife, she had that conversation with me, and I remember crying, and I was like, Amy, I just don't know what to do. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Just let me have a drink, and I think it'll be better. And I tried to convince her. I'd even put V8, or I'd even put vodka in my V8. Honey, I'm just drinking V8, and I would load it up. It would be this much V8, and I would just fill it up. And I would do anything. The insanity is me 100% because I kept doing it and wanted a different result, and never was. So anyway, she ended up saying, "Well, I'm going to give you some time away from me and the kids." And of course, it was pretty emotional. So she moved back home moved in with her mom. And I decided, I already resigned. We're gonna sell this house because we had a hard time paying for it. And I was like, I'm just gonna go back and stay sober. This is what I need. Well, I moved to Seneca, came back home, and I almost had and not that she was easy to convince, but she was wanting me to get better so much, and she just didn't know what to do. She already sent me to treatment,
right?
And she was lost, and some of her family members, which I don't blame them at all, they, just leave him. I think he's not going to get any better. And she would tell me that, and she stuck by me through all of that. Well, I moved to Seneca, and didn't really have access to the Xanax, but what I did have access was to the alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried, and I keep telling you I tried, but it was the hardest thing in my life. And what I didn't do is I didn't ask for help. I didn't see other people struggling the way I was struggling. I didn't seem like I thought I was on top of the world. I don't know. I was a school teacher. I just had a hard time asking for help, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just my ego, or I don't know.
Were you ever worried of what people would see you like if you're saying, "Hey, I need help because I'm battling with alcohol addiction"?
I was worried about that.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, I was worried about what people thought about me. And of course, as a school teacher, you're thought about pretty highly. You don't want to be in a bar. That's why when I did drink, no one knew the dark side of me, because I would be in the liquor store. I'd try to go. I was so sneaky. I'd go right when everybody had closed, where I knew a lot of cars were going by to see me, and I'd run right out, and I'd have that bottle ready for the next day. Mm-hmm. And all day I'd be thinking about it. I never drank at work, but I was always thinking about that drink, and it was horrible. But anyways, I moved up here, and I thought things were going well, but there was a night, and I just, I was even lying to my wife again. Everything getting better, and because I wanted her back, I wanted the kids back, and I said, yeah, it's going good, it's just, we'll find a place. And so I really never, this whole process, Corey, losing my job, me redesigning, we pretty much lost our house, or I put it in the market, and I didn't have my family. I was at rock bottom.
Yeah.
I was still drinking. Well, there came a day, November the 6th, and I was working at Freddy's, and I had too much to drink again. And I got back, my tolerance was so high. I remember buying a fifth of vodka, and at that time I got addicted to it, and I had the whole thing gone. I just remember drinking it was all gone. And so I ended up getting another DUI. I think I failed to remember, I failed to mention I got a DUI when I was in Rossville as well. Because I again lied to my wife and told her I was going to an AA meeting. Mm-hmm. But that was just a good out for me to go to the liquor store and just go drive around.
Yeah.
So I got a DUI there, and I was hiding it pretty good, actually. But through all of that, I ended up getting a DUI here, and of course, she obviously found out about it, and had to call another friend to come get me out. And actually, alcohol, and not only in my case, but I think in everybody's case, eventually it's either going to lead to jail or death. Mm. And I didn't know this, Corey, but when I woke up the next morning in that cell, I remember the sheriff telling me, "Do you know that you were legally dead last night?" And I didn't even know where I was at. It was that bad. And I said, "Legally dead?" And he goes, "Yeah, the doctor, we brought you to the hospital because you were, and I was out driving. I think they pulled me over because I didn't turn on my blinker, and went to the doctor, and I didn't remember it, but they did my blood count. They took all these tests because they knew I was pretty bad. Mm-hmm. But the doctor informed me that I was pretty much legally dead. Where it was like, I don't remember what the numbers are, but it was like a 4. I don't know. It was high.
Yeah. Wow.
It was super high, and it's because I was so used to binge drinking, and I drank it so fast. And so as that day, I remember sitting in there, and I thought, what am I doing this whole time? I want to please my family. I wanted to do this for all, and I to this day, I swear, I wanted to so bad, I just couldn't. I couldn't get help, and I didn't ask for help. But I remember what someone told me at Mound Ridge. Aaron, you've got to do this for yourself. You've got to want to stop drinking. You've got to want to stop taking those Xanax pills. And I said, yeah, I do. And I remember the sheriff, when as he walked away, he told me all this, and he goes, Aaron, just take care of yourself. You're way better than this. And it just stuck. And at the time, I knew my wife didn't believe me. I got out, and it was that day. It was my last drink of 2013. And I don't know how, but I started going to meetings. And Corey, when I went to those meetings, it's the first time I've actually went to meetings here in town. I heard stories that, wow, that story is way worse than mine. I feel so much better.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
I could connect, and I just remember going in there, and I was crying, I was upset, and I still had the shakes, and I had night sweats, and so I was with people. At the time I didn't have a job, so I called people. I got some numbers from AA, and I was calling people all day, whatever it took to keep me sober. And I wasn't worried about my family at the time. Of course, it was always in the back of my head. But I was living here, and I didn't really have a job, and I didn't know what to do. The only money I had was from savings and whatnot. So I went to AA meetings every day, wherever they were at. I called people every day, and I remember getting my first coin. I got the first one just for being there, and I was like, wow, it's a coin, But then when I got my 30-day coin, I was like, wow. So I kept that coin, and I kept thinking, do this for yourself. I kept day by day, and so I did, and the 30 days led to 3 months, and then it finally got to 6 months, and at that point, I proved to my wife, I showed her my coin, maybe this time, and of course the whole family, friends, everybody, he's just going to do it again. He's just going to relapse again. So I had nobody in my corner except for my wife, and of course my kids wanted to believe it, but they seen Dad drink so many times and say, I was going to stop. So she ended up, we got a place, and, but eventually she started going to meetings with me. I went to AA, and it was really nice. She went to the women's group.
Yeah.
The women's group. And they started talking to her about alcoholism, and so we worked on it together. And then my 6 months led to a year. And that, let me tell you, that the first year was so rough. I knew my wife I knew she knew I was gone all the time, but she knew I was at meetings. But the good thing about my wife is 95% of the time, she went with me. So she supported me. And the thing that really helped me out was just listening to other people. And I wish I would have done that from the start I wish I would have seen what other people have went through and how it resulted, because it might have affected my life and how I would have handled it, just seeing the outcome. Because I hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
I lost everything. And I told your mom, I said, the best thing I could tell people is, of course, that insanity. You keep doing it over and over again, and you expect a different result.
Yep.
Well, that was me. And the last thing is, I, of course, been an 80s person, the cassette tapes. I keep thinking back, if you had a cassette tape of my life and you rewound it, what people ask me, well, how do you stay sober? And I tell them, well, play the tape. And each time I tried to get sober, I got drunk. I mean, play the tape. I just think back, play the tape, Aaron. If I take this drink, I'm going to eventually it's going to lead to either death or jail. And it did. I mean, I was so close to death. And all those things clicked on that day. And it was the most longest, and I still get the jitters thinking about it. It was the longest day, but it was the day that I turned my life around. And so I think I'm 5.5 years now.
That's outstanding.
And I don't know how, but it's been so wonderful. I mean, I've got, I still have my anxiety. I still have my stress. And I don't think that's ever going to go away. So I just find alternative things that I can do to take my mind off of it. One of the things I know, this big headphones that I stick in my ear and I play country music.
Okay.
So and I love mowing, so I'd mow my lawn, and people, they drive by, and when they see me in the coffee shop, hey, I seen your goofy butt up there mowing with this big, 70s or 80s headphones on, and I go, yeah, but I always think to myself, but I'm sober, and it's the most rewarding feeling, way more rewarding than I'm a school teacher at day, but at night I'm oblivious drunk.
Yeah.
Because I it was just chaos. But I think that the thing I never did was reach out to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if it could help one person, my story, it's well worth it. But I don't know. It's been good the last few years.
And you and I were talking before we got on, and you had mentioned that like you don't even think about alcohol anymore. It's just kind of a normal day life of it's removed from your life. And 5.5 years is, I mean, you're coming up on 6 years really soon. I mean, it's actually past 5.5. That's awesome. I mean, it's so exciting, and to hear you say that, yeah, it's a struggle. It wasn't easy to get clean, to become sober, but I think it's also good for everyone out there to hear that it's still possible. And if you have someone in your life that's struggling with that, you just can't give up on them. I mean, they want to do it, and what I loved about your story, and thank you for being so vulnerable, is that it was so similar to mine as to where it took for me to realize that I need to do this not for my wife, not for my kids, but for myself. And yeah, they're a part of that, and the people around my life are part of that too, but man, I need to start caring about myself. And I heard you say that, and it's so true. Until you want to better it for yourself, number one, which in return will better the life of the people around you. I mean, that was powerful stuff.
It is pretty powerful. And I don't know how I made it through alive at certain times.
Yeah.
But I was in that mode, I was in that lifestyle but it involved drinking. I just, I was Superman at day, but at night, I was evil. I don't know. I always look back. As I mentioned earlier, I wish I could go back. My biggest regret is I wish I could go back and be a better dad, be a better, husband. But what I've learned too is I can't dwell and worry about the past. All I can worry about is the today and the future. And I know God didn't put us down here to enjoy ourselves and just do fun things or whatever. It's going to be a challenge.
Yep.
And I just want my time here. I want to make a difference, and when I leave eventually, I want people to look back and say, he was a pretty good guy. He did this and this, and he did so many good things. And that's my big goal right now, and to stay sober. But yeah, it was rough, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, Aaron, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me, to open up, to be vulnerable. There's so many stories like Aaron's, like mine, out there, and I think the more people that can be vulnerable, can speak up, and let them know that, hey, you're not alone. And like Aaron had said before, it felt like there was only one or two people in your corner. The more you speak up, people will be there to support you. The worst thing that you really can do is suffer in silence. I know the stigma's out there. We're working to break that down every day, and you would be surprised at the amount of people that want to help, that want to see you get better. So free those skeletons from your closet. Continue to work forward. It's not going to be easy, but learn from people. I mean, right now, Aaron's coming up on 6 years of sobriety. His life seems like it's in a great spot. I just had some of his coffee. Great coffee, my man. But I really think that the more we talk about it, that we have to stop sweeping it under the rug. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just like anything else, that if you struggle with addiction, if you struggle with mental illness of any sort, any of life's struggles, that there is support out there. There are ways to manage it, but you just have to seek that support for yourself because you deserve it. So hopefully that has inspired you today. Again, Aaron, I want to thank you. If you would like to share your story, feel free to reach out to me on our website and we can connect. Other than that, have a great day. Thank you so much.